What's up guys, welcome back to my channel Anime Fiction. I'm back with a new episode of What If Naruto Was Reincarnated as a Hollow with a System Part 2. And if you did enjoy the video, give this video a like, and if you're new to my channel and like my content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 12 Naruto was taking a break in the evening to spend time with his family at home, enjoying their time together. It was the closest thing he could come to spending time with his family, so he did it on a regular basis. They had just finished dinner, and his father was watching something dull on TV. In the meantime, his mother was cleaning up the kitchen and doing the dishes. Finally, his sister had gone upstairs to study, and he caught her fiddling around with his old computer while referring to some books. She would occasionally look out the window, and he was concerned that she could have observed him, not realizing that her spiritual perception had improved significantly along with her spirit power. She wasn't quite at Ichigo before meeting Rukia levels, but she was inadvertently creeping closer. As a result, he was becoming more visible, transitioning from a barely discernible blur to a ghostly representation of himself. Oh, he's a hollow. He's a phantom version of himself. An unpleasant alarm sounded for the second time, and he was not pleased given what had happened the first time he heard it. Emergency mission. Safeguard your family's home. Bonus. Illusory aura. Fuck. I doubt it wants me to safeguard the actual building from termites, he thought to himself, and instantly stretched his spiritual vision as far as he could at the time. It didn't take him long to see two tracks of hollows going his way. Even though they were all weaker than him, he wasn't looking forward to dealing with two at once. Why are they going in this direction? I'm hiding my spirit power, he inquires. Answer. Your sister's spirit strength has developed to the point where it can be detected by hollow. Wait. When did that occur? Why haven't I noticed if that's the case? Answer. You can, but hollow souls are instinctively drawn to greater spirit power souls. This has been suppressed in you in order to diminish your basic need to devour anything that can provide spirit strength. To pay attention to such things, you must consciously focus your spiritual perception. This is more akin to Shinigami or Ronkar's experience than to typical hollow, who operate primarily on instinct. Normally, he would seek out a vantage point and wait for the best opportunity to execute a stealth assault, but he couldn't go far from the home because both hollows were coming from separate directions, and if he left to engage one, the other would almost certainly make it to the house before he returned. His one edge was that they had no idea he was there yet. He promptly concealed behind the house in a blind location where neither could see him at first glance upon approach. Meanwhile, he made an effort to shrink himself as much as possible. He needed to sneak attack one of them before they realized he was there, so I could hold off the other right away. Inside, Mito saw Naruto's unusually quick movement. Normally, he would move cautiously and slowly to avoid both injury and being noticed, but he didn't have time for that now. She dashed up to the window and saw him leave the house. She dashed through the house, curiously watching him through the windows, when she heard a tremendous hollow roar, but it wasn't coming from Naruto's direction, but rather from the opposite end. She dashed back to the other side of the house, looking out the window, when she noticed another horror running towards them. It appeared to be a 10-foot gorilla on all fours approaching them with proportionally huge fists and a white mask. A somewhat different roar resounded off to the right, and another, slightly further away than the first, was running towards them. She stepped back from the glass, but she couldn't take her gaze away from what appeared to be imminent doom. Naruto could feel the two hollows approaching at a rather fast pace, though after his development it seemed like a snail's pace in comparison. They were rather careless in their approach to the house. They hadn't noticed him yet, and each seemed eager to be the first to arrive, perhaps fearful that the other might beat them to the feast. He knelt, keeping a careful eye on them. 300 feet. 250 feet. 50 feet. He instantly jumped straight up, generating a local tremor, and slanted forward in midair while directing the spirit particles to create a vertical surface at his feet, then jumped forward in midair with full force, sending him directly towards the first hollow. It was difficult for him to accomplish this because he was relying only on his spirit particle control, which he had never been educated in. Thankfully, his dexterity came in handy because he only needed to stay on the surface for a brief while. He flew through the air at nearly half the speed of sound, his fastest speed yet. He had already flown past the hollow before it even acknowledged his existence, but had overshot it due to not holding back any power when kicking off the spirit particle platform. To catch himself, he swiftly plunged his second blade into the ground, making a deep hole to slow him down and swing back around. Plus 900 XP 3083 4960ths. Mito observed a blur pass through the window, followed by the monster, before slowing down and displaying the familiar creature. She went downstairs when she heard a scream and wasn't sure what she wanted to do. Her folks were perplexed when she went there. On the TV or radio, there appeared to be a little earthquake that occurred without notice, and now there was an unusually loud grinding sound. When they peered outside, they noticed that the road in front of them appeared to be dug up, but they couldn't figure out why. Meanwhile, Mito noticed one strange creature slowly disintegrating into black particles as the familiar one ran straight for them. Naruto returned to the building and spun around just in time to avoid being slammed into by the other hollow. Unfortunately, unlike his speed, his strength was still lacking, and he was driven back a few steps, nearly collapsing into the house. He stopped the motion by digging into the pavement with all four paws. The hollow was able to detach from him and leap back a few feet. With no fur and a bipedal appearance, this one appeared more human-like, yet it had whip-like appendages instead of arms. It was considerably slimmer than the other. As soon as it was free of his grasp, it began flailing its arms. He was able to deflect the most of its strikes with his blades, but he didn't manage to cut them straight away, and he was even receiving some blows that he couldn't evade because doing so would mean the house would get him instead. The reason its arms weren't being sliced appeared to be a combination of it hardening them and redirecting them just before striking his blades to shift the impact from a direct to a glancing strike. Thankfully, the damage from its tricky whip movements wasn't too severe. It seemed to be geared more towards dexterity rather than strength like the first, allowing him to tank the blows with only scratches, though he did make sure to completely block any attacks aimed at his mask. Mito watched without blinking. It was evident now that the familiar creature was guarding them, and the first time wasn't a fluke. As she watched it get whipped continuously due to the angle and high speed of the movements, she didn't realize he was actually successfully blocking the vast majority of the hits and that those that did hit had limited effect on Naruto, which made her worried for him and solidified her feelings that whatever he wasn't something bad, at least for them. Their parents were still perplexed because they were hearing exploding sounds and gradually more of their front yard was turning into a wrecked wasteland as the earth was ripped up and trees and plants were cut to pieces or almost detonated for no apparent reason. Mito began sprinting towards the front door, fearful that the familiar creature would perish if it continued to defend them in this manner. "Mito, what are you doing?" her father shouted, grabbing her by the wrist. He went on, "It's dangerous." "I don't care," she yelled over the din as she yanked her arm free and ran out the door. Despite their fear of what was going on, both of their parents pursued her, concerned for her safety more than for their own. They ran outdoors, distracting the assaulting hollow and relieving Naruto of the need to defend the house at all costs. Though it was a huge risk for his family, it was also a huge chance for him. While the whip hollow was distracted, its attacks slowed substantially and lost some accuracy. Before it could refocus on him, he took a rapid stride into striking range and slashed the arms off the whip hollow with a quick and strong twist going from his feet all the way through his body and into his arms. They landed with a thump on the earth. It realized it was going to perish at this rate, and self-preservation began to outweigh its great hunger, prompting it to seek refuge. Before it could take another step, Naruto pierced the back of its head with a high-speed strike, quickly breaking its mask and cruelly terminating its last fight for survival. Plus 800 XP 3883 4960ths, Spirit Power plus 14, Spirit Strength 1391 to 1405. Mito witnessed it take down the previous attacker, and before it could vanish, he bit off the rest of its head, consuming it entire in one move. She was no longer terrified and instead felt relieved. She believed that the threat had come from the other two, and that they were secure again, even if the other one was still around. There's no way this went unnoticed by Soul Society. Two very strong hollows unleashing massive quantities of spirit pressure while putting up a massive struggle and causing massive collateral harm. Even if I keep mine hidden, they'll find me. He instantly realized this and turned away from his family, who were fleeing. He didn't even have time to see Mito had followed him. A Shinigami emerged out of nowhere on the roof of the house and began surveying the situation a minute or two later. He wore his scarlet hair in a high ponytail, with a noticeable widow's peak and brows. His brow was wrapped in a peculiar fabric. There were two hollow signals here releasing high amounts of spirit power. There was obviously some kind of fight here, he wondered aloud, though no one could hear him. Did they kill each other? He inquired further. Although doubtful, he couldn't conceive of any other explanation when combining the fact that there was evidently a fight and both of them being missing with no trace of them nearby. It had only been a few minutes since the signals were detected, and he had rushed here. At the strength levels documented, there was no possibility for them to flee quickly enough for him to lose sight of them. Unless one survived and possessed an extremely exceptional, one-of-a-kind skill involving space, time, or high-speed travel, none of which were common on normal Hollow. A hell butterfly landed on his finger, and he reports the incident before releasing it. Then he returned his eyes to the two parents, who were still dazed and perplexed by what had just occurred. Well, I guess it's time for the cleanup, he said, mildly angry that he couldn't fight the Hollow. If Naruto had been present, he would have recognized him as Renji Aburai, who was still a member of the 11th Division. Naruto was able to sprint a few blocks at full speed before entering a plot with a house that was still under construction and hiding inside. Unlike most Hollows, getting as far away from the Shinigami as possible so they couldn't detect him wasn't his priority. Getting away and, more importantly, out of sight was. He made sure to hide in an area that was well protected from all sides and chose to wait until the next day. Although he could probably defend himself, run, or even defeat a low-level Shinigami, if it was a higher level one, he'd be screwed, and even if it was a low-level one and he could defeat it, he'd become a known entity to Soul Society, which he didn't want right now. He was already relieved that Soul Society seemed to be disregarding the fact that Naruki City had become exceptionally secure from Hollows for no obvious reason in recent months. Thankfully, he knew Soul Society wouldn't take it as seriously as if a Quincy was killing Hollow and upsetting the balance, so he should be safe for the time being with them, assuming the activity in the area was lower because the patrolling Shinigami were coming across fewer Hollow as well, matching the readings, and he double-checked that he hadn't been spotted or apprehended. Emergency mission successful. Illusory aura skill awarded. Why did this appear now rather than when I killed the second one? He was perplexed. Answer. They were still in danger until the host left. He was about to leave or fight when he heard an unexpected noise and spotted Mito moving back behind a wall she had evidently stumbled out from behind. Mito. He said in amazement. This time, a combination of him getting used to speaking in his new body. It turns out that producing intelligible human speech with a non-human mouth is quite difficult, and her spiritual perception having grown quite strong, she was able to understand him well enough to know he said her name. Her eyes widened in shock. It truly spoke, she thought, finally certain it had tried to speak to her before. Hello. There, she stammered out. She took a deep breath, chose to trust her feelings, and strengthened her determination. Do you have a name? She asked, sounding more assured now. He appeared awkward just based on his body language, despite her unable to interpret any facial indications owing to the mask. He appeared to get fidgety following the inquiry, as if it had made him nervous. Should I inform her? She won't believe me. But I can't lie to her either, he reasoned. It's Naruto, he eventually managed to reply, trembling. Naruto. She was taken aback by the response. What a coincidence, that was also my brother's name, she said, unsure how to react. I know. Was all he could say in answer. You know? She asked, clearly perplexed by the situation, which was not unfolding as she had anticipated. How come he said he knows? She was curious to learn more. Why was he shielding them? Why was he remaining so close to them? Why did he feel so comfortable? Why didn't he go after them like the others did? So many unanswered questions. In response to her question, he appeared to nod. What do you mean? She inquired cautiously. She was scared that if she asked the wrong question, he might respond adversely, but she had to know more. For a little moment, he was deafeningly silent. That bracelet you're wearing. It was your 8th birthday when you saw it at the store. You couldn't stop talking about it. How it made you look like a princess. How much you wanted it. It went on for weeks. It didn't stop until you unwrapped it as my gift on your birthday. It took all the money I had saved in the previous 8 months. It was worth it though, he said. Mito's eyes began to tear up, and despite her best efforts, she appeared even more perplexed. I am possible, she reasoned. Aa or why you my hi Naruto? She questioned, her face filled with doubt and concern. Naruto was silent for a moment before nodding cautiously. She dashed towards him, wrapped her arms around his waist as high as she could, and began weeping while nonsensical sounds and sentences appeared to be jumbled in. Due to the surprise, he was rather awkward and was most concerned with keeping his blades away from her in order not to damage her while simultaneously afraid that his acid touch might burn her. He was fortunate in that she appeared unaffected. System. Why isn't she burning? He asked hastily, concerned that he was still a menace to her. Answer. She is immune to the corrosive effects of a hollow's touch because it was your hollow spirit power that ignited her spirit power. He breathed a sigh of relief, but was also concerned about how his presence was impacting her. She eventually got her wails to stop and transform into sobbing. You died. What happened to you? We had your funeral. Where did you go? She murmured between sobbing, one thing after another. They weren't difficult to spot, even with his increased senses. I did die, or rather, I was killed, he said. But why are you here? Did you go to Yomi? She inquired. No, I was. I guess asleep, he replied, not knowing how to explain everything. It's not difficult for him to grasp because he's familiar with Bleach, but it's likely to be quite perplexing for someone who knows nothing about any of this. Naruto took a deep breath, knowing that this would be a lengthy conversation. He did, however, need to explain it to her. She had sat cross-legged in front of him, crossed her arms, and looked up at him, puzzled. He sat down as well, folding his legs beneath him. Is this a seizure? So be it. So I was killed back then by something similar to what I am now, he began. Wait. Does that mean if those two before us had killed us, we would have turned out like you? She interjected. She is normally a nice young lady, but she is comfortable enough with her brother to interrupt him without feeling unpleasant. He may have indulged her a little too much back then, and her curiosity must have won. My situation was a little unusual compared to a regular attack. Normally they just eat people making themselves stronger and the people they eat are gone forever. He replied. That's also why I was gone for so long, because I was asleep while I transformed, which is also unusual. I slept for 10 years while I transformed. Whoa. So what are you? She inquired, wanting to satisfy her curiosity. I'm now a hollow. It's essentially a corrupted soul. Normally, when you become one, you turn into a mindless beast enslaved to his hunger for souls with little to no consciousness like the other two you saw, but in return they become very powerful. He told her sternly. You can identify a hollow primarily by 2 features. The white mask, he said as he pointed his blade at his mask before lowering it to the hole on his thorax, and the hole somewhere on their body, most commonly where their heart would normally be. She stood up and gently caressed the margins of the hole that ran from the front to the rear of his thorax. It's really a hole, she exclaimed, stunned. Doesn't that hurt? She wondered. No, it's not abnormal, he told her. So, why were you invisible before? She inquired, her mind racing with the subject. I wasn't invisible. You were just incapable of seeing or hearing me like most other humans, he clarified for her. Ah, so that's why Mom and Dad couldn't see you. But why can I see you now then? She was thoroughly engrossed in the dialogue. Well, that's my fault, I guess. He was blushing now that he had to explain himself. I spent so much time near you that my spirit power managed to stimulate yours. Then when you experienced what you thought was a life or death situation when you were first attacked and I showed up, this awakened your spiritual sight albeit in a very weakened form. Then as I spent more time with you, your spirit power and spiritual sight continued to be stimulated, slowly improving them over the months since then. When she heard this, she nodded solemnly. Her experiences over the previous year or so were now making sense. So, what now? She inquires. Well, you may think the world is far more dangerous than you thought after your experiences these months and today, but I assure you, you are vastly underestimating it, he said. First and foremost, there aren't only hollow like you've met thus far, there are also Shinigami. Like in the stories. She exclaimed. Well, sort of, but not quite. Shinigami are originally human souls who have strengthened their spirit power, granting them, well, superpowers I guess would be close enough. They look like regular humans, wear black hakama and haori. They usually wield a sword of some kind too, and some can make it transform to power up. Kind of like magical girls. He explained. Hollow and Shinigami are the two largest factions, then there are a bunch of smaller factions of humans and souls with a variety of superpowers quite unpredictable from one another, some quite weak, but others even more dangerous than the Hollow and Shinigami. He doesn't want to go into too much detail and have her constantly worried about things if he starts bringing people like Aizen and Ivach into the picture. For the time being, he can handle this weight on his own. Being able to chat to anyone, let alone a family member, is a big help and makes him feel better than he has since his death. That is, the second one. Wait, aren't Shinigami the good guys? She wonders. Only comparatively. Their main tasks are exterminating Hollow and guiding souls to Soul Society. Though this in general makes them better than most groups as a whole, you have to keep in mind they are just more powerful human souls. They still have all the flaws present in humans. Are humans the good guys? He asks. I guess you have a point. So Hollow is almost certainly a bad guy. Shinigami is probably a good guy, but there are no guarantees, so be cautious. She managed to summarize it fairly quickly. Yeah, I guess that covers the main point of what I was going to say, he admits sheepishly. They end up losing track of time as they talk all night about various topics such as what happened to his family after he died, what she had been up to, and, of course, what he had been up to since he returned. They didn't realize how long they had been talking until the sun began to rise again. Let's take you back home. It's been a long night, the coast should be clear now, and you need to rest, he said. Hey, what was that ability I had? He asks the system swiftly as they return to the family house. Aura of illusion. Host can use his spirit force and iridescence to create illusions near to his body. The maximum range is just out of reach of the hosts. Maintaining this takes spirit power, and the more the modifications the illusions impose on reality, the higher the cost. Wait, don't I have stealth now if I mix it with my spirit power concealment? He asks, suddenly considerably more enthused than he was at the prospect of becoming a ninja jumping around town and ganking innocent hollows. Answer. The host is still audible. Near enough. This is the fantastic thing I've been talking about, he exclaims. Also, because of his dexterity, he can already be quite silent unless he is at full speed and power output. I'll have to think of other applications for this expertise as well. It should be fairly versatile. The only constraints appear to be the distance it can travel and how much spirit power I have to fuel it, which will only grow in the future. Even more so, when combined with other talents or items, it may have similar synergistic benefits, such as stealth when combined with spirit power concealment. He muses on his newfound power. He doesn't spend too much time on it, though, because his sister can see him now, and he has to make sure he's paying attention enough to answer to her, unlike previously. When they get close to their house, their mother notices and runs out first to hug Mito. Mito, are you okay? It's a good thing you weren't here when the accident happened. According to the police, the truck driver was exhausted and ended up losing control. They found. Their mother begins to speak at a breakneck pace. It appears the Shinigami did come by and erased my parents' memories of what happened a few hours ago. It's a good thing Mito chased me down and they missed her. She might have been able to resist, but it would have only gotten us more unwanted attention from Soul Society. A sham attack on our doorstep is more than enough. Any more coincidences like that, and they'll start asking questions and looking into things, Naruto reasoned. He should probably tell his sister about this before things get much more problematic when she tries to talk to their parents. The good news is that his mother is still talking, and Reina hasn't been able to contribute anything to the discourse. Mito, I didn't mention that the Shinigami can change regular humans' short-term memories. They must have arrived sometime last night to catch the hollows and found the place the way we left it and decided to clean up after the hollow attack when they realized it was already over, he quickly informs her. She frowns before responding quietly, so their mother doesn't notice. That's rather dark. They just go around mind-wiping people whenever they feel like it. Well, I told you they weren't what you could call the good guys. This is pretty much their mo. Thankfully I ran away when I did or I might have been caught and we don't want that kind of attention. Well, at least not yet. The same goes for you if you run into one, act like you can't see them and try to get as far away as possible as quickly as you can without drawing attention to yourself. She nods solemnly, but they both think it's best to focus on their parents for the time being. Several employees are already working on the road, and another is presently repairing the front yard landscaping, rolling out new grass to replace the damaged stone path and trees that have only the stump left. Thankfully, save from a few scratches from flying debris, the house itself is almost completely unharmed. Nothing a fresh coat of paint couldn't solve. And they must have really good insurance, because the crew fixing the front garden was here before we even got up, their mother continued. This was most likely the most thrilling event in her life in recent years. Well, she wouldn't if she remembered last night, but she doesn't. They agree to continue discussing once she finishes speaking with their parents and having breakfast. When she enters, their father glances up and inquires as to what transpired. She makes an excuse about a girlfriend phoning with an emergency and needing to come over. Fortunately, when you're a typically well-behaved child, lying to your parents becomes much easier. After a short meal, she rushes up the stairs and locks the door before opening the window so they may converse. So, what's the plan from now on? She inquires. There is no plan. You need to get some sleep, he says severely. You and no plan. She exclaims, I think that must be the best joke you've ever told me. Naruto frowns, knowing him all too well. We'll talk about it later when you've rested and have a clear mind. He waved her off for the time being, and she did need to relax. Whatever, she says sarcastically. I think I see some dark circles, and is that a crow's foot? He retorts quickly. All right. Mom, I'll get some sleep, she finally admits. You're going to explain that to me later, she said as she walked to his ancient computer. I've been trying to figure it out for 10 years and still can't make sense of half of it. The long night and excitement from the fight had truly worn her, so she immediately flopped on her bed without even getting undressed or changing and started snoring like the princess she was within a few minutes. He went out for his customary patrols and hunts shortly after she went to sleep. He was undoubtedly working harder than the entire Shinigami unit in charge of Naruki City. Plus 100 XP, 4,964,960ths. Raise your level 34 to 35. Additional stat point, XP, 23 5,280ths, spirit power plus 17. System status panel, he requested. Equals status board equals. Naruto Uzumaki's name, spiritual age, 49, ethnicity, hollow. Rank. None, level, 34 to 35, XP, 23 5,280ths, equals stats, equals. Fortune. 19, extreme dexterity, 30, Article 15 of the Constitution. Intelligence level. 6, power of spirit, 1405 to 1422. Stat points available. 1, equals passive ability, equals absorption of spiritual energy. Extremely fast regeneration, acidic note, equals active abilities equals. Separation of soul and body, spirit power hiding. Aura of illusion. Okay, put the stat point into strength, he instructed the system. Answer. The strength of the affirmative host has been increased by 1 to 20. Naruto had finished his patrols for the day early and now had some time to play around with his new abilities. He begged his sister for a huge mirror, and she found a full-length mirror that she brought outdoors and placed in front of him. Fortunately, their father was at work and their mother was out visiting a partner, so there was no one to pass judgment on his sister for carrying a mirror out into the backyard for no apparent reason. It took a while for him to get a solid sense of his illusory aura, but then it clicked in his head and an iridescent shimmer seemed to flash across his body before his body began to fade until he was completely invisible in the mirror. Whoa! So cool! Mito exclaimed, are you still there? She wondered what he had done. Yeah. This is an illusion skill, not a movement skill. I'm still in front of the mirror, though it's a little strange looking into a mirror without seeing yourself, he said swiftly. When he glanced down at himself, he could still vaguely see himself and, of course, feel his body. Thus becoming invisible had no effect on his own direct perception of his body, only on others or if he perceived himself indirectly, such as in a picture, video, or mirror, as he is today. He was relieved that it didn't take much work to learn the fundamentals of this new skill. Now it was just a matter of speeding up the skill and devising new and effective methods to use it both in and out of combat. With a single thought, only his mask became visible again, leaving the rest of him invisible. Alright. Controlling smaller areas appears to have no additional cost in mental strain or spirit power beyond consumption increasing with the degree I'm altering reality with the illusion, so I seem to have just about absolute control on what is seen within the range of illusory aura, which is good. He nods, though with only his head visible, it appears rather awkward. Well, for stealth, this is already a complete success. As long as they don't hear me, there's no way for them to see me, and they can't sense my spirit power because of the concealment skill, he muses aloud. Mito adds with a huge smile, yeah, that's going to be so useful. Her curiosity is getting the best of her once more, and all of this is just out of this world. Who doesn't want to witness extraordinary abilities and events? At least if you aren't in danger from them. Mito, can you help me with something? He said before proceeding to the next stage of testing. Sure thing. What do you need? She answered solemnly. I'm going to make my head invisible again, and once I'm completely invisible, I want you to watch where I was, and I want you to tell me if the effect slips or has other problems once I start moving a lot or quickly, he says. His head gradually fades away. Looking in the mirror, it appears that the process is gradually speeding up as he becomes more accustomed to regulating this power. He starts dashing around the backyard after a few moments. He did this for approximately a minute. How about it? He says, reappearing where he left off. Did you move? She asks, uncertainly. From her perspective, he vanished. A minute passed with nothing happening, and then he reappeared. Yeah. I moved all over the yard, even circling you, he added. What? I didn't notice. Wait, shouldn't you still make a sound? She exclaims. Unless I move very quickly or with a lot of power, I'm able to keep my movements very silent. If you had enhanced senses, you might be able to tell a little, but as a human, your sense of hearing is quite weak, he adds. She begins to pout. Like it's so cool to be a hollow, she replies, averting her gaze. How did my sister become a tsundere? He jokes. I'm not a tsundere. I'm just irritated that you have cool powers. It's not fair, she hastily retorts, slightly embarrassed. Well, it's not as much fun as it looks, or it wasn't before you could see me, he mumbles. Without warning, he manipulates his illusory aura, and a second right arm appears from his shoulder, identical to his usual one. Did you just grow another arm? She asks, surprised. No, it's still the same thing. Try touching the new one, he said. She gently attempts to grasp the dull side of the blade, but her hand simply goes through it. That's really strange. It really messes with your mind, she mumbles. Alright. Now on to the second part, he adds, returning his attention to what he actually wanted to test. The actual version of his right arm vanishes, leaving only the phony one. Alright. Now this could be extremely useful, but in order to fully utilize it, I would need to be able to do all parts of this at high speed while in combat. He determines he would need to train a lot in order to speed up the process if he wants to make the most of this power. It's ideal for surprise strikes and deception. When combined with his quickly increasing dexterity, this might be incredibly deadly. At least according to his adversaries. The spirit power cost also appears to be very manageable. I should be able to use it alongside other skills quite regularly in a drawn-out battle without worrying about running out of spirit power before my enemies do, he predicts. Once I grow and rank up, though, it should go from a small amount of consumption to pretty much negligible, barely being different from a passive I can control at will. Mito was just staring in awe, not knowing what to say because it was all quite surreal, at least as surreal as things could get considering her dead brother had returned as a gigantic monster. But she was eager to assist. Naruto spent the next year grinding as many hollows as he could to raise his level and spirit power. The more his dexterity, the broader the region he could efficiently patrol, and hence the faster his gathering speed. Although mind-numbing at times, there is an addicting element to raising levels and stats, especially when they have an influence on your real-life abilities rather than in-game ones. He also spent a significant amount of his free time outside of cleansing the city honing his illusory aura skill to its utmost limit. He had a feeling this was going to be one of, if not the most essential skills he possessed in the long run due to its extreme adaptability in comparison to the majority of his other abilities. Acero or Abala is a wonderful assault, but Sonido is even more significant because of its sheer adaptability. An illusory aura clearly lies on the Sonido end of the spectrum, making it a requirement to master. It also didn't take long for it to become a key component of his combat. Whether it was sneaking through town and landing surprise assaults on Hollow, greatly lessening the risk of hunting, or if that failed, employing it during battle to confound his enemy. This became easier as he became faster at deploying the skill and more skilled at its delicate manipulation. He got so adept at it that he could now duplicate his former human shape, complete with all of his mannerisms, while still living. He had begun to use this approach when speaking with his sister in order to make her feel more at ease. Although she had grown accustomed to his hollow shape, there was still a certain amount of discomfort with a 10-foot huge beetle. It may appear that achieving this is no huge thing, but if it was only replicating his form, he would appear to be some kind of weird soul-less puppet version of his former self. He had to simulate breathing, blinking frequently, the movements your eyes make when interacting with other people, the blood under your skin, how wrinkles form when making various emotions, and the numerous involuntary actions you make all the time without even realizing it. Though the end result appeared simple, the sheer amount of mental capacity required to keep all of these factors in mind while sustaining the talent was astounding. However, it was an excellent technique to train his expertise in the skill. He also spent some of his spare time teaching his sister the intricacies of the operating system he was on the verge of finishing before he died, which was built with knowledge of OSUI from approximately 30 years in the future. Even if it had been delayed by 10 years, it would have been 20 years ahead of any competition on the market in terms of use and features. It may no longer be useful to him, but it could still make his family extremely wealthy if his sister could become adept enough in it to debug and upgrade it so that she could take over and market it as a product as he had intended. Once released and profitable, she may easily recruit personnel to continue development, leaving it primarily as a source of passive cash. Then his family would no longer have to worry about money. Perhaps his father will be able to work less or stop entirely to spend more time with his family. He'd only been there on weekends and for breakfast, frequently not home until late at night. It would also be healthier for his health. It took some time, but she had been studying it for years. It's just that there wasn't anything like it yet, so understanding the programming and design philosophy behind it was difficult without someone to teach and explain it. Microsoft Windows and Apple Lisa's popularity aided her slightly, but only marginally. Nowhere on the far more developed features. After a year of him coaching her, she had a good grasp on the entire thing and was able to begin updating it to address the 10 years of new hardware improvements since Naruto had programmed it. Finally, he received another emergency task when his mother and sister were attacked by another Hollow while out shopping together. His power was now well above that of the ordinary basic Hollow, making it easier to guard them. He got his first non-Hollow skill from this and was extremely pleased with himself. He appears to have scored another jackpot this time. Plus 1 year, plus 182500, X, P courtesy of Hollow, Animal Spirits plus 18250, X, P. Plus 1800, X, P from Humans pluses, plus 5474 Hollow Spirit Power. Spirit Power plus 36 from pluses Humans, plus 365 Spirit Power gained through passive absorption. Plus 19 levels, 19 stat points added, the emergency mission has been finished. Blut's skill is granted. System, show me my status panel, he requested. Equals status board equals, Naruto Uzumaki's name, age of soul, 50 to 51. Ethnicity, Hollow, rank, none, level, 35 to 54. XP, 52,973 14,900s, equals stats, equals, power, 20 to 25. Deficiency, 30 to 35, Article 15 of the Constitution. Intelligence level, 6 to 15, spirit strength, 1422 to 7297. Stat points available, 1 to 0, equals passive ability, equals. Absorption of spiritual energy, extremely fast regeneration. Acidic note, equals active abilities equals, separation of soul and body. Spirit power hiding, aura of illusion, blut. He had invested significantly more in intelligence this year because he discovered it had a rather noticeable effect on the improvement of his skill proficiency growth and spirit power control, both of which had a rather large impact on his use of illusory aura, finally convincing him it was worthwhile to invest a bit more in intelligence. Blood seems to rely heavily on intelligence to operate it without incurring backlash, with his spirit strength serving as the fuel. The more spirit power he poured into it, the stronger its powers got, but it also became more difficult to manage the spirit power coursing through his veins, and making a mistake with that could result in catastrophic consequences. It took a lot of effort to figure out how to wield it without incurring backlash, but the power of his hollow physique, combined with his high-speed regeneration, allowed him to practice without fear of not being able to recover if he did receive some blowback. However, when intelligence increased, it became easier to keep more and more of it under control at the same time. Another year had gone without Naruto's knowledge. He had been obsessed with improving illusory aura, but now he had blood to focus on in his training. He needs to improve it so that he can run it subconsciously during fight rather than having to focus on the talent. He experienced backlash on countless occasions, but as a hollow, he was able to recover from mild blowback in minutes, and even if it was more severe backlash, resting for a few hours would usually take care of the inside harm it produced. All of his efforts had paid off, as he could now fight many hollows at the same time while running blood artery or blood vene without losing control. It had been so ingrained in his body that it was as natural to him as breathing. Illusory aura was also becoming second nature to him as he practiced it regularly by emulating his former self or blending into various situations. One of his favorites was blending in with water. It was quite difficult to totally change all of the ripples generated by the body in the water, which are constantly shifting in unanticipated ways. If he made only a few blunders, it would be evident that there was something in the water. It was also difficult to remain completely hidden in the downpour. His rising dexterity and developing illusory aura were combining in a lethal illusory dual swordsmanship where it was getting increasingly difficult to determine what was a true attack and what was a feint. Genuine began to feel false, and fake began to feel genuine. It was beginning to form a combination of skills that couldn't be countered by someone with a similarly powerful physique and spirit power. The synergy between the skills and his swordsmanship that he was gradually refining to work completely with the skills as if it had always been one, allowing him to punch above his weight. He hadn't quite perfected the capacity to quickly flip between blood artery and blood vene, which he believed was required to increase his battle effectiveness yet more. It was difficult since the flow of the two was so different, and unlike putting the abilities through muscle memory, this wasn't possible for the rapid switch, which was still extremely likely to result in a backlash. Unfortunately, he had not received any additional assignments that would have granted him new powers, though this was probably for the best because he hadn't mastered the skills he currently possessed, and spreading himself even thinner between grinding levels, spirit power, and improving his skills by adding another skill would simply slow down the other things he was already working on. Mito really finished the OS in less than a year, created a small company, and released it. Growth was excruciatingly slow at first, to the point where she had to go out and sell it and show people how to use it herself. One significant advantage was that her father was persuaded, and as a powerful person in his firm, he was able to persuade them to switch after seeing how much more effective their workflow could be. This made the corporation her first large business client, giving her an advantage. After a while, she struck gold. A small computer hobbyist magazine with a limited but devoted readership that included some renowned programmers approached her for an interview because this atypical OS piqued their interest. During the interview, she mentioned that the original version was coded by her brother over 10 years, but he died before completing it, and that she spent the last 10 years trying to finish it. The publication didn't delve much deeper because they were more interested in the OS's technical aspects than its history. However, because it was a compelling tale, it was picked up by big media outlets. After losing her brother, a young girl aspires to take up his mantle and revolutionize the technological world. It was an emotional story that might serve as an example for young ladies. The narrative nearly wrote itself, and it didn't take long for it to go from news outlet to news outlet, giving her an unanticipated surge of free publicity as she went from unknown to an icon for young girls. She appeared on the covers of newspapers, but also of girls and technology magazines, and she was debated on talk shows for her originality. All of the buzz about her and her efforts resulted in a tremendous surge. she became so preoccupied that she had to drop out despite being in her third year of college. However, the income that came with the thriving company more than compensated for her failure to complete her degree. Even if both of her parents were entirely opposed to her decision, she was well on her way to being a billionaire, in yen in a matter of months. There were many growing pains, but she was able to hire several dependable people in the following months to establish the foundation for a true tech firm. Plus 1 year, XP from Hollow plus 273750, Animal Spirits plus 22800, XP. Pluses, Humans plus 2250, XP, plus 8211 Hollow Spirit Power. Spirit Power plus 45 from Pluses, Humans, plus 365 Spirit Power gained through passive absorption. Levels plus 20 bonus stat points, Status Panel, he instructed the system. Equals Status Board equals, Naruto Uzumaki's name, Age of Soul, 51 to 52. Ethnicity. Hollow, Rank, None, Level, 54 to 74. XP. 3,913 26,330ths, equals Stats, equals, Power, 25 to 30, Dexterity Level, 35 to 45. Article 15 of the Constitution, Intelligence Level, 15 to 20. Spirit Power. 17,242 to 7297, Stat Points available, 0. Equals Passive Ability. Equals, Absorption of Spiritual Energy. Extremely Fast Regeneration, Acidic Note, equals Active Abilities equals. Separation of Soul and Body, Spirit Power Hiding. Aura of Illusion. Blut. He'd been pouring points into everything but Constitution. First, why tank hits when he can fully dodge them with speed and illusions? Furthermore, Blut Vene is a large multiplier to his Constitution even without having to add points to it. However, Dexterity remained king because it was the most valuable to both his stealth attacks and his newly formed swordsmanship. His Spirit Power was also finally reaching major levels, allowing him to employ his abilities freely. Illusory Aura, Blut, and Spirit Power Concealment didn't waste much on their own, but running all three at the same time adds up. During his swordsmanship, Illusory Aura consumed roughly 80 Spirit Power per minute, although Spirit Power Concealment consumed only about 10 Spirit Power per minute. Blut believed that everything depended on how much he forced into his veins and arteries. During his practice sessions, he was utilizing roughly 100 Spirit Power per minute to sustain Blut Artery. If he wanted to tank a large attack or add a burst of speed or strength, he could easily sustain Blut at thousands of per minute. He could only run all three skills simultaneously for roughly half an hour at the start of the year. Good enough to deal with your average Hollow even if they can band up on him, but not enough if he encounters higher-rated opponents. A few months later, Naruto arrived home from his nighttime patrol to find his mother the only one there. It's normal for his father to not return home until late at night, but Mito appeared to be still at work. Due to her company's high work volume and expansion, she was working later into the evening. After 2 years of hard work, they were not only becoming successful in business, but they had also secured some government contracts for their operating system. Despite the large reduction, the volume was simply outrageous and more than compensated for it. She finished folding the laundry and proceeded to prepare dinner as usual. She is highly conscientious about keeping everything in order and on time. She stepped out with a full trash bag and placed it in the garbage can directly next to him. After what happened to Mito, he made a conscious decision not to get too close to his parents, as they weren't sure if their parents obtaining power would be a good thing or not. It could help them protect themselves, but it would also attract more Hollow, and 3 humans with strong spirit power being in the same spot at the same time is likely to draw notice. They concluded that it would be best to avoid it for the time being just in case. He was suddenly alerted, which hadn't happened in a long time. Emergency Mission. Mito's Rescue, Blade of Energy, as a reward. He didn't waste any time and dashed to her office. He began carefully exploring the town, moving out from the office while using the full range of his spiritual senses in search of her spiritual signature, which he was already familiar with. It didn't even take him half an hour at full speed to find a warehouse on the outskirts of town. From outside the surrounding wall, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A typical warehouse with a wall encircling it and a gate guarded by a bored-looking guard who appeared to be about to fall asleep on the job. However, he detects Mito in the back of the warehouse. Closer investigation from a nearby rooftop revealed armed guards patrolling the building, and he could sense quite a number more people inside, which was odd for what appeared to be a locked warehouse late at night. Fortunately, he does not detect anyone with unusually strong spirit power for a human. This eliminates the need for him to use his stealth. It doesn't get any easier than this. He simply jumps over the wall, his only concern being that he does not make any noise or collide with anything. When he sees one of the guards, he notices that guy is dressed more like a militiaman than a guard. He utilizes soul-body separation to separate his soul from his body in a single move. He was trying to pull some information out of him, but it seemed impossible because the sheer sight of him scared him crazy to the point that he couldn't construct a cohesive phrase. He decides that rather than attempting to get knowledge, he will simply devour them. Plus 80, X, P, XP, 13,330 30,860ths, Spirit Power plus 2. Spirit Strength. 18,689 to 18691. He begins by going around the perimeter of the structure, picking off 3 more armed militia members one by one. He proceeds to the warehouse loading dock now that he's completed clearing the perimeter because he can't get through any of the ordinary doors without notifying everyone in the building. He gets through the loading dock doors without making too much noise. Plus 80, X, P extension 3, XP, 13,570 30,860ths, Spirit Power plus 6. Spirit Level. 18,691 to 18697. The amount of room inside the warehouse is significantly greater. He is currently in what appears to be a stocking and the loading area. Mito appears to be in one of the rear offices. He continues and clears out the last 5 militia members in the stocking area, using the shelves to conceal the remains. Plus 80, X, P extension 5, XP, 13,970 30,860ths, Spirit Power plus 9. Spirit Power. 18,706 to 18697. When he smells something burning, he hurries to the rear rooms. Smoke is emerging from the area around the entrance. He stormed into the room, where he discovered what he can only describe as an inferno. By this moment, panic has taken hold. Finally, he notices Mito in the center of the room, except she appears completely unscathed and is holding some kind of delicate-looking silver scepter with a gem in the head and is using it as a flamethrower, torching the room and everyone and everything in it like some kind of queen of flames. When she spotted him, her countenance transformed from somewhat disturbed to a big smile with a hint of pride. She appeared to be completely unaffected by the fires she was igniting. He soon finished the souls of the 3 men on fire. He guessed they were males because they were coming close to charcoal briquettes. Extra crunchy. Plus 80, X, P extension 3, XP, 14,210 30,860ths, Spirit Power plus 6. Spirit Power Level. 18,706 to 18712, Mission finished. Energy Blade skill given. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? He says, examining her up and down. She appears to be. She is, however, summoning flames. Better than ever, she exclaimed with a sneer, swinging her scepter, which appears to be moving the flames along with it. She was overjoyed to have a new skill and couldn't help but brag about it. It would have been unbearable if she hadn't been so adorable. To avoid injuring her, he pulls her up gently with the back of the blades. It was technically a princess carry, but considering that he was a big monster, it appeared that he was the monster who kidnapped the princess. Then he dashed away so rapidly that they vanished. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening to this video. I hope you did enjoy this pretty story, and if you did, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for helping support, and have a great day.